And here is where it all didn't happen. Good evening. It's a beautiful August bank holiday Sunday evening, and I'm 5 miles south of Bristol, looking towards the city in that direction. You can possibly see across the horizon 7 bridges in the far distance, the Welsh hills beyond. And I'm on the slopes of a hill in beautiful rural North Somerset. Below is one of the poorest areas of Bristol. There's Withywood and Hartcliffe below, and the contrast in looking up from down there past the flats to the mansions that exist on this hillside couldn't be sharper, really. Geographically in Bristol, I am the same distance to the southern circular, the Ringroad of Bristol, as I was from the Ringroad in Manchester growing up, although quite a long way away in terms of the topography of the setting where I am. I came up here to try and orient myself and describe a little more the theme behind Backwater, which is, it's a concept album that I'm halfway through, about growing up inside and outside of the circular ring road of a city, and symbolically in the suburbs and in the urban environment within the ring road, coming of age. So I didn't talk about the tracks and what they represent. The first track is actually called Release on Brighton Beach, which is a deliberate nod to The Who and to Quadrophenia, and the first track of that, which is I Am the Sea. But the location wasn't that relevant. It was about the experience of awakening within oneself for the first time, realising oneself in the first little incremental way, but a very significant way nonetheless. And so for me, it happened, well, it started by the River Mersey dropping acid in a field with a group of friends, and then walking to a party which was being held by folk that were a bit older than us, and the music that was playing in the kitchen, there were 2 guitars playing in the kitchen, playing Andy Warhol by the Velvet Underground. And I remember that it was obviously all this stuff was priming the pump. Everybody else was on the same batch of hallucinogens that we were on. And I went upstairs to the hall mirror and I looked in it for however long it was. It's difficult to measure these things in such circumstances. And I remember thinking, the words were, this is tripping, but the undercurrent was, so this is me. This is me in this state. And it was a sense of, words are rubbish, aren't they? But it was there was a sense of wholeness, a sense of understanding. And without realising it, that was the first time that I stepped outside of my existence as a Salian, from the part of Manchester that I'm from. The first time I awoke to anything other than what was assumed. You know, I was a fish swimming in water with other fishes, and I didn't know what water was. And then the head goes above the ocean for the first time. So the second track is a recourse back to childhood and playing by the River Mersey. And the Ringroad, the Carrington Spur, which was an offshoot off the Ringroad towards the town of Carrington, and was being built when we were growing up there. We played on the dirt that was stacked up to take the road. And that was our space that we escaped from what the track's title, which is The Silence at Home. And that is, it's a metaphorical silence, and it's about my father's generation and mother's generation, which were of the boomer generation, but the boomers that didn't do that experimentation, and they just got on after the war, and the silence was the things that were unsaid from the upheavals of their upbringing and their parents' upbringing, and that we as suburban kids lived through and played through. From there, the next track moves into talking about getting onto the Ringroad, and there's a sample from Finney from 23 years ago where he says, and he's in the car driving, and he says, we go from this area into this area, and I just thought that was delicious, that there's a shift through being able to drive. I couldn't, but there are others that could drive, and to be able to go to people's houses, and as we did, to listen to records, to sample records. We had access to technology that back then a lot of people didn't. It's in everybody's homes now, but we had an S50 sampler and a D10 synthesizer, a Roland SH101, and a garage full of vinyl, and we wrecked the shit out of it, often humorously, starting off with a sort of hip-hop approach, but then getting a little bit more ambient, and it's probably me, my noodlings, a bit more serious about it. And we were then able to traverse in and out, and we would go to club nights, often stuff that was put on by people that we knew that were older and that had been on the scene for a while, and we'd come back from that experience and take those feelings into our little setup and try and work stuff with it. Nothing new, you know, it's been done for generations. And there was this almost tribal sense that we were onto something quite magical and something quite special. And I still maintain that some of it was quite special, some of it was toss, but some of it stands the test of time. Was that driven by the piss and vinegar of youth, or was it actually inherently good? Was it both? I don't know. Maybe both. And there was a glow that came from that, and not discounting the next substance that was to enter the frame, which was MDMA, of course, and going clubbing and experiencing another layer of self, but particularly in relationship to others, was what I found was the great high of MDMA, was we are together, and that forms the next track, which is about bonding in this tribal, communal experience with the dazzling lights and the drums, and awakening something archaic at once and modern. And the Till Dawn bit leads into the next section, which is back to the feeling of separation and wandering out of an empty flat, or a flat strewn with bodies, and exploring revisiting our hometown again, but with depleted serotonin and a sense of sadness and depression at things. And then that leads into the next thing, which I haven't got any ideas down for, which, or it's certainly not a title, which is mixing with the group of people slightly older that were just from the new wave punk scene, had got into minimal techno, deep techno, and were trying to put nights on and knocking around with them, and they saw us as bright-eyed and probably a bit naive, but with interesting ideas. And I think that period was the realisation of the nihilism of a lot of what was around us, and the disillusionment with what we were becoming a part of. I certainly became frightened that I'd be consumed by it, and had other things that were better for my slightly sensitive and weak emotional body, and that was play work and working on adventure playgrounds and in play settings. Well, I kind of quit for that, and then ran to the hills 6 months after that, and that is the second part of what I'm gonna put down. But yeah, the broad spatial dimension of it is about moving between this inner space, the urban environment, all the things that are available in that setting, and all the dystopia to it, and feeling that also, experiencing it, and the sharp end of it, which there was plenty of in Manchester, and then coming back out into an environment to reflect on it, but one that was not necessarily an easy place we felt easy in either. This is my backwater, our backwater, and I'm kind of hoping it is relevant to other people other than myself when it's finished. I think it is. It's not just a nostalgic piece. The music is potent, timely even, for an old man. And it's my best work so far, certainly alone, solo work. So, homage to the beautiful city of Bristol, and my beautiful family for putting me in the space for writing stuff, taking on something as ridiculous as this, but joyfully in a space that's a long way from, relatively long way from where I grew up, but it's helping me to understand it so much clearer, and as a dad, and as a middle-aged person. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for now.